Hello everyone, and welcome to our paper within the symposium, Educational Psychologists Investigate Cognition and Motivation in STEM, part of the 2020 Virtual APA Annual Convention and the program for Division 15. My name is Matt Bernacki, and I will be presenting from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill on behalf of Harsha Perera at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and Candace Walkington at Southern Methodist University. The paper I'm presenting today is titled Interest Two Ways: Examining Competing or Complementary Measures and What They Tell Us About Student Interest in Mathematics. The presentation I'm giving today is a measurement paper that's part of a larger initiative funded by the National Science Foundation as a project titled Personalizing Mathematics to Maximize Relevance and Skill for Tomorrow's STEM Workforce. In this project, we begin with a learning theory where learning characteristics generally influence the way that students engage in tasks and the kinds of outcomes that they achieve. And a personalized learning theory would assume that we can leverage the characteristics that we know about a learner and adapt a learning task in order to improve and enhance the outcomes that they can achieve. So when we personalize, we take data from the learner and influence the task by adjusting it to reflect those particular features that students share. And in this case, we've surveyed students about their interests in particular STEM careers with the hopes that we can increase their interest in math tasks by embedding them in those STEM contexts and improving students' math performance as a result. So that personalized learning intervention is career-personalized math problem-posing tasks, where students are asked to pose a mathematically sound problem with a question and answer and a story around them that might reflect a particular situation within the careers that they aim to pursue. So for instance, a student will be asked to pose a math problem, and they'll use resources that we've co-developed with STEM experts who describe how algebra is used in their daily work. So a student from a medical or health career track might receive a problem from an anesthesiologist discussing treatment with a particular drug that involves this equation, and will be able to view this video or read a vignette that has the narrative from the video, would be able to work with a template to see the problem structure, or would be able to practice solving with an example problem that involves this story. Our focus today is not on any of the experimental designs here, but is really specifically on the measures that we use to understand students' math interest and to determine whether or not we can increase it. Interest is defined as the process of engaging and the predisposition to re-engage with a particular activity. Individuals' interest in a topic is theorized as a unitary construct comprising both cognitive and affective dimensions. Interest develops through a process of engagement and re-engagement, where elements of an environment trigger students' interest and maintain it through experiences of enjoyment and perceptions of value. And as individuals sustain engagement and re-engage in topics related to their interest, this interest develops further, increasing and deepening individual interest. As a construct, interest encompasses enjoyment and value, as well as one's depth of knowledge and competence in the area, and the tendency to frequently, voluntarily, and independently engage with the interest. Measures designed to reflect interest often sample these features. We examined data from middle and high school students' responses to surveys who reported their interest in mathematics using two instruments. Linenbrink-Garcia and colleagues' measure employs enjoyment items and task value items drawn from the Motivated Strategies of Learning questionnaire. Renninger and colleagues take a more novel approach, embracing the fallibility of items and acknowledge that items are likely to index multiple related features of interest, as can be observed in the language of items, including items that index some combination of one's depth of knowledge and competence in an interest, and their frequent, independent, and voluntary engagement with it. We use data generated by these measures to answer the question: how do instruments conceptualized around different features of interest complement and contribute to understanding of interest? Participants in the study numbered 296 math students drawn from schools in the southeastern United States, including a rural middle and a suburban high school. The gender split was reasonably close to 50-50, some variety in terms of the ethnic identity of the students involved in the study. About 20% spoke something other than English as their first language. 2/3 were pursuing STEM careers in terms of their self-report, with only a few of them being undecided. And our instruments were delivered via Qualtrics. Those included a demographic survey, surveys about students' interests in their careers, the two math interest surveys that we've discussed a little bit so far, and some additional items related to perceptions of math and career and their interests and their intersections. After collecting and cleaning these data, we submit them to data analyses to answer our research questions, the first of which is, how do these items associate into emergent factor solutions, and how do these collections of items align to the features of interest described by theorists? To answer this, we conducted an exploratory factor analysis. We next examined how the traits of interest and the methods used to assess them influence the fit of model solutions to these data, using a series of trait and method models and comparisons of their fit. And then to answer our third research question, how well do items that are designed to indicate one or more features of interest represent these features of interest when cross-loadings and item fallibility are accommodated by models? We evaluated this using a bifactor exploratory structural equation model because this allows us to assess the generality of interest as a unitary construct as well as the individual factors specified by theorists, and to impose cross-loadings that are non-zero to examine how well a single item might index one or more of those individual factors in addition to the general factor. Our first set of results involves the solution to the exploratory factor analysis, which, when we examined models with 4, 5, and 6 potential factor solutions, observed the best fit for a 4-factor solution, which was able to distinguish a factor that largely aligned to the enjoyment factor from the motivated strategies for learning questionnaire, with a single item from the Renninger scale loading on it, a second factor aligning to the task value or a utility aspect of the instruments that we used in the study, and then a third reasonably clear factor, which we tentatively labeled here the independent engagement with interest factor. Included 6 of the items from the Renninger scale. Thereafter, things became a little bit less clear with the 4th factor that was estimated. You'll notice that the factor loadings tend to be higher on this factor for individual items than on any other factor, but we do see some similarly weighted coefficients here across the independent factor and what we're labeling for now as the unclear factor, and really kind of acknowledge that the intentional fallibility and cross-loadings here kind of imposes this phenomenon where we see 2 constructs both being kind of overlapping in terms of the degree to which the factor loadings are weighted similarly across items meant to do multiple things in terms of the assessment of interest features. So we've reached the point in a 12-minute presentation where I'm going to ask you to pause your screen and take a picture of this so that you can inspect it with much greater precision at a later time point or on pause for a prolonged period here. This is the set of different nested models that we compared to examine the trait method data that we had in order to determine whether or not interest could be understood to be a single construct and whether or not we could identify whether the instruments used to assess it are correlated or orthogonal. If we jump to the chase here, the model that achieved the best fit was indeed the one that obtained a 1 trait and 2 orthogonal method factor solution. And models 2C and 2D here, you'll notice both achieved pretty excellent fit on the CFI, GLI, and the RMSEA. The model 2D also converged on a seemingly inadmissible solution with far higher standard errors. So this suggests a high degree of instability in the solution, and we thus accepted model 2C as the best representation of these data. The take-home message here is that interest appears to be measurable as a single trait, observed orthogonally via 2 distinct methods of assessing it. These measures tap complementary features of interest and also employ different item formations to do so, which we elaborate on in our next slide. And in our final results slide, I'm presenting here the bifactor exploratory structural equation model solution, where we specify paths from each individual item, both to a general factor, as well as to the additional feature of interest to which it is supposed to be indexed. So there are 4 items under enjoyment here that are indexed to enjoyment, as well as to the general factor from the Lindenbrink-Garcia scale, and a single one that we index to enjoyment from the Renninger scale, based on the language of this item, even though enjoyment wasn't necessarily a focus of that measure. You'll see similarly bolded the primary loadings intended by a theorist or scale author. And then each of these demonstrates the weight of the parameter estimate from the observed responses to that item to the latent factor that it indexes. So some things that you'll notice here is that items index the general interest factor quite well. You'll notice that all of the loadings for these are significant and quite high. Thereafter, the enjoyment and value scales sustain strong loadings even after parsing the generality from these more specific features of interest. And if we look at the independence factor, you'll also notice that those ones have relatively strong loadings, though we also see some items not necessarily identified by the scale authors as meant to index independence, also doing a pretty solid job of reflecting that factor. Thereafter, items reflecting depth of knowledge and competence, as well as voluntary engagement, they fit, but also have some mixed indexing in terms of the individual parameter estimates that are used to model the factor in this solution. Absent from this table is the theorized factor of frequency, which we are unable to fit in any bifactor ESEM model. Just drawing this to a conclusion and identifying some takeaways and next steps. We conclude from the set of analyses that we ran today that individual interest, while exceedingly complex, can be understood and measured as a unitary construct, and doing so with multiple scales to index that general factor, as well as to investigate its additional features, is a productive enterprise, though we acknowledge that some features are more robustly indexed than others in this method. We do intend to push forward with some bifactor modeling and some ESEM approaches to try and better accommodate those complex assessment designs, and aim to do so by also adding some additional item development to our process to see if we can better fit models that represent all the factors that we would expect based on theory using this broader item set. For now, we'll end there. Thank you for your time and look forward to a live question and answer session.
Hello, this is Jiali. I'm from University of South Carolina. The topic I'm presenting today is gender difference in high school students' career interest in different STEM fields and factors influencing the difference. The reason why I'm interested in gender difference in high school students' career interest is because only a small percentage of students in the United States pursue degrees in STEM majors, and even fewer pursue STEM careers. There's also an underrepresentation of females in STEM careers. Well, we know that STEM career interest in high school could predict college majors, and females and males have demonstrated different occupational aspirations from early adolescence. And teachers have differential expectations, treatment, and stereotypes, which may affect students' self-expectations and performance in STEM-related courses. Female students are more likely to be harmed by these differential treatments and stereotypes. There are a few research gaps that need to be filled. First of all, most studies use convenience samples with small sample size. And the definition of STEM careers are different across studies. For instance, some studies use the traditional STEM definition, which includes science, technology, engineering, and math. But other studies may have a broader definition of STEM. For instance, in this study, STEM includes health occupations. And most studies have focused on enrollment and persistence in STEM majors in college. However, career aspirations surface in late adulthood and early adolescence. So in order to study differences in career aspirations, we need to start earlier than college students. Last but not least, some studies found that with the same ability level, girls tend to be less confident about their abilities compared to boys. And the gender differences in motivational beliefs are not well studied. Based on these research gaps, we have developed several research questions. The first, is there any gender difference in high school students' career interests in different STEM fields? Do boys and girls feel that they were treated differently by math and science teachers? And does this affect their STEM career interests? Do values and expectancy for success in math and science influence career interest in STEM? And do boys and girls have different values and expectations for success in math and science? We used expectancy value theory as the theoretical framework. The major component of this theory is expectancy and values. Expectancy means one's expectations for success. And the values variable has three components: intrinsic value, utility value, and attainment value. Intrinsic value is one's interest or enjoyment. Utility value is the usefulness for future goals, and attainment value is the link between the task and one's sense of self and identity. According to expectancy value theory, career aspirations or choices are most directly influenced by one's ability and the subjective task value of the available options. The data we used is the high school longitudinal study. It has 2 waves of data collection in 2009 and 2012. The participants were 21,000 in the first wave of data collection and 20,600 in the second wave of data collection from more than 1,800 schools. The measures include the career interest, which is the dependent variable. It asks the students to identify the occupation they're interested in at the age of 30. And the independent variables include teachers' differential treatments. Do you feel that your math and science teacher treats males and females differently? And intrinsic value, such as do you enjoy math or science course? Do you think it's a waste of time or boring? Math and science identity is measured by, do you see yourself as a math or science person? And utility value, do you think math or science is useful for your life, for college or jobs? Math and science efficacy measures one's confidence in math and science skills, textbook or assignment. Efficacy is most similar to the expectancy component in the expectancy value theory. So we used multinomial logistic regressions and t-tests to examine the predictors of career choices and the gender differences in the career aspirations. For research question 1, is there any gender difference in high school students' career interest in different STEM fields? You can refer to table 1 for the descriptive statistics. We can see that overall, students were much more interested in non-STEM fields than STEM fields. In table 1, you can see that boys, about 73.5% of boys were interested in non-STEM majors for round 1 of data collection. And for girls, it's 59.2. And compared boys with girls were less likely to choose the traditional STEM majors like life and physical science, engineering, information technology, and mathematics. In round 1 of data collection, 11.2% of boys were likely to choose the traditional STEM majors, but only 5.1% of girls would choose these majors. However, girls were much more likely than boys to choose health occupations. For round 1 of data collection, it's 31.3% of girls, but only 10.4% of boys who would like to choose health occupations. For research question 2, do boys and girls feel that they would be treated differently by math and science teachers, and will this affect their STEM career interest? We only have data in round 1 to examine this question. We found that both girls and boys did not feel differential treatment from math teachers or science teachers, and that this treatment did not significantly influence their career interest in STEM. For research question 3, Do values and expectancy for success in math and science influence students' career interest in STEM? Well, we found that math and science identity and utility value predict interest in traditional STEM majors and also health occupations in both round 1 and round 2 of data collection. However, science efficacy and intrinsic value in science do not predict career interest in STEM or health occupations in either round. Math efficacy and intrinsic value in math did not predict career interest in STEM or health occupations in round 1, but did so in round 2. For research question 4, are there any gender differences in high school students' values and expectancy for success in math and science? A series of t-tests suggests that there is only slight differences between boys and girls. Girls had higher values in expectancies and values in round 1, and boys had slightly higher values in round 2. Although these differences were statistically significant, the effect sizes of the differences were really small, negligible. So from the results, we can see that boys prefer engineering and physical sciences, the traditional STEM majors, but girls prefer health occupations, or the so-called people fields. This is consistent with existing research findings. So if health occupations are not separated from the other STEM fields, there would be more girls having a career interest in STEM than boys. So that raises the question of how to define the STEM fields. And boys and girls do not perceive differential treatment from teachers. Math and science identity and utility value consistently predict career interest in STEM, while efficacy and intrinsic value do not. This is so the role of identity and utility value is consistent with prior research, and also the role of efficacy is inconsistent across the studies. Last but not least, girls' motivational beliefs in math and science are mostly higher than boys in the first round, but lower in the second round. We should notice that the differences are very small, even though statistically significant. The statistical significance was detected mainly because the large sample size. It's very easy to detect the statistical significance with such a large sample size. So we need to focus on the effect size. The limitations of the study include that we only consider the influence of differential treatment from teachers. We did not consider the differential treatment or stereotype the students get from their parents, their peers, and maybe the traditions of the society. Also, we did not control for ability when examining gender differences in motivational beliefs. For the next step, we should try to examine the relationship between career interest in high school and college major selection and career choice after graduation with the longitudinal studies. We should also find out reasons for girls' decrease in motivational beliefs in the second round of data collection, although the difference between boys and girls are not big. We need to focus on why it decreased for girls. We also know that girls were still less willing to choose a career in science, engineering, and information technology, even though their expectancy belief expectancy and values for math and science is the same with boys. And also they did not feel differential treatment from teachers. Finally, we can do some latent profile analysis for STEM career interest. Thank you. If you have any questions, just shoot me an email.
I'm going to tell you about a study today involving predictors of math achievement in diverse 3rd to 5th grade learners. The inspiration for this work is the language-based achievement gaps between English-speaking students and their dual language learning counterparts on the National Assessment of Educational Progress. For example, English speakers look pretty good on mathematics achievement with 45% scoring above basic levels, but their dual language learning counterparts show the opposite pattern. 41% of those children score below basic levels in mathematics, and their reading scores show a similar pattern with 65% of dual language learners scoring below basic levels in reading. By 8th grade, these gaps have widened, and 72% of dual language learners are scoring below basic levels in both reading and math. These patterns have suggested to some that there may be some connections between language and mathematics achievement. And Peng and colleagues proposed the language hypothesis, the language function hypothesis, to describe this relationship. They argued that two functions characterize the relation of language to math. One is the medium function, where language enables communication about math, and this would lead to the prediction that oral and written language would contribute directly to math achievement. But there's also another function that language provides, and that's the thinking function. Language may provide the vehicle for higher order cognition to affect mathematics achievement. So they may partially mediate the relation of cognitive skills to math achievement. And we know that language and math are related concurrently. 4th grade reading comprehension predicts math word problem solving beyond word reading. Longitudinally, 3rd grade reading comprehension predicts growth in math problem solving all the way to 8th grade. We know that math and reading difficulties are co-occurring. And we know that vocabulary and oral language comprehension predict math beyond working memory, word reading, and gender in both English speakers and dual language learners. So dual language learners seem to have some specific language-based challenges in academics and math in particular. They have trouble with language complexity and math word problems. They have trouble with academic vocabulary in comparison with their English-speaking peers, and math vocabulary instruction helps to improve their math performance. And they also have trouble with lexical ambiguity. They have difficulty with words that have both common everyday meanings and specialized academic meanings, like the word head that can mean leader of a group in social studies, but also just mean a body part in everyday discourse. We need to know more about dual language learners' ambiguous math word knowledge and its contribution to math achievement. We also know that cognitive skills, thinking about that thinking function of language, we know that cognitive skills contribute to both language and math. Executive function skills are higher order mental processes involved in goal-directed behavior, and they involve things like inhibitory control, cognitive flexibility, and working memory. And all three of these skills contribute directly to reading and math achievement. So this theoretical perspective and these findings led us to 3 research questions. We want to know whether knowledge of the math meanings of lexically ambiguous words differs between dual language learners and English speakers, and whether that relates to math achievement across language groups. We wanted to know about the relations between language and cognition, and whether language contributes directly to and partially mediates effects of executive functions on math achievement. And we were also interested in key predictors of math achievement, particularly for dual language learners, because these might serve as targets for instruction. And so our conceptual model looks like this. We have language variables, those lexically ambiguous math words, that can have common everyday meanings, but also mathematical meanings, oral language skills and reading skills. And then we examined the 3 core executive function variables that I mentioned earlier. And we were particularly interested in this direct path as well, predicting that math word knowledge would have a direct effect on mathematics achievement. Our participants included 476 dual language learners and English speakers, and we measured math achievement using the Spring Park assessment that focuses on math concepts, procedures, reasoning, and applications. And then we measured reading skills, oral language skills, executive functioning skills, and lexically ambiguous math word knowledge. We selected ambiguous math words based on curriculum materials, published academic vocabulary list, and piloted those with 3rd to 5th grade students and teachers. And the teachers ranked those words as most important to their curriculum, and that's how we selected the words that we used in the study. We asked children, what does this word mean? Can it mean anything else? And then we asked them, if they didn't supply a math-related definition, we asked them directly, can it mean anything in math? And so you can see for these particular words, there were common and mathematical definitions. And we recorded all of the definitions that they provided, and we adapted this procedure from Zipke and colleagues, 2009. So did dual language learners know fewer math meanings for lexically ambiguous words? Yes, they absolutely did. 2x2, ANOVA revealed a main effective language group. Dual language learners knew fewer words overall, fewer word meanings overall. We had a main effective word meaning type. All students knew fewer math meanings than common meanings, but we also saw an interaction. Dual language learners knew fewer common and fewer math meanings than their English-speaking peers. Our question about whether knowledge of math meanings was related to math achievement was also supported. The same pattern of correlations emerged across language groups, and there was significant correlation between math word meaning knowledge and math achievement for everyone. And we conducted a hierarchical regression to determine whether language contributed directly to and mediated the effects of executive function on math achievement. And that answer was yes as well. For all students, 19.3% of the variance in math achievement predicted by executive functions originally was actually shared with language. So language was mediating that effect of executive function on math. You can see in this first bar, I'm showing the gold is the direct effect of executive function when it's entered first, and then 25.6% of the variance in math achievement is predicted by language when it is entered on a second step. But if you reverse the order of those skills in that regression equation, you can see that language grabs 44.9% of variance and executive function has 2.5% unique variance. And so we did this within language groups as well, finding that 18.4% of variance in math achievement was shared with language, predicted by executive functions was shared with language for English speakers, and also for dual language learners. 16.8% of the variance in math achievement predicted by executive functions was shared with language. So language did, supporting that thinking function of language, language did mediate the effects of higher order cognition on math achievement across the language groups. We were also interested in which variables contribute significant variance to math achievement overall. So we looked with a regression analysis here to see which of those variables controlling for grade level predicted math achievement for all the students together. And we found that 2 executive functions, cognitive flexibility and inhibitory control, were important, as were word reading, reading comprehension, oral comprehension, so listening comprehension, and math word meaning knowledge. Now, when we broke it out by language groups, we saw a little bit of a different pattern. The English speakers only had these variables emerge as important to their math achievement: word reading, reading comprehension, and knowledge of math word meanings. And then finally, the English speakers showed a different pattern: cognitive flexibility, word reading, oral comprehension or listening comprehension, not reading comprehension, and math word meanings emerged as significant predictors of their math achievement. And so that points to some potential targets for intervention for these students. Here, we used hierarchical regression to parse out shared and unique variance predicted in PARCC math achievement scores for these students, because the medium function focuses on direct achievements of language, direct effects of language, on math achievement, whereas that thinking function talks about those shared effects and that mediation, which we talked about before. And I wanted to here show you the direct effects of particular skills on math achievement for each of these learner groups. For all the children, you can see here that 30.8% of the variance in math achievement predicted by these variables was shared, but for reading variables, we saw 9.4% independent variance predicted. For oral language, 1.3%, executive functioning, 2.5% of the variance was accounted for. And finally, this green chunk here, I want you to pay attention to that for all three bars. Math word knowledge predicted significant unique variance in math achievement, math word meaning knowledge, above and beyond all of these other variables overall for English speakers and for the dual language learners. And so that math word knowledge appears to play a unique role in math achievement. So what do we conclude from this study? 3rd to 5th graders are significantly more likely to know common meanings than math meanings for lexically ambiguous words. That's not surprising, but we need to know that because dual language learners know significantly fewer of both types than their English-speaking peers. We know language skills contribute directly and partially mediate effects of executive function on math achievement. Knowledge of math meanings for lexically ambiguous words predicts math achievement beyond language and cognitive skills. And there are specific variables that emerged as potential targets for intervention for dual language learners to help remediate that achievement gap: cognitive flexibility, oral language, word reading, and knowledge of math meanings for lexically ambiguous words.
Hello, everyone. My name is Xingya from George Mason University. I'm delighted to present our study in the symposium. The title of our study is Profiles of College Student Science Beliefs in Relation to Achievement Goal Orientations. The other two authors are Dr. Michelle Buehl and Dr. Angela Miller. Let's get started with the background. Individuals' beliefs are influential for their learning, academic achievement, and motivation. In science learning, students' beliefs are important for motivation, such as achievement goal orientations. The current study focused on two beliefs. The first one was epistemic beliefs. It refers to individuals' beliefs about the nature of knowledge and knowing. The other one was implicit theories of ability. It is defined as individuals' beliefs about their ability. It includes entity belief and incremental belief. In the psychological literature, whether researchers should study these two beliefs together or separately has been debated. Person-centered approach, such as cluster analysis, allows researchers to study how separate beliefs coexist within individuals. Chen, in 2012, employed the latent cluster analysis to investigate secondary students' holistic profiles of both beliefs in science. He also investigated how emergent profiles associated with achievement goal orientations, self-efficacy, demographic variables, and achievement. Main findings from Chen include 4 emergent profiles were related to variables of achievement goal orientations, self-efficacy, and achievement. Both beliefs are better to be considered in conjunction with each other. Regarding science motivation, ability beliefs are more relevant to motivation. Epistemic beliefs are more strongly associated with cognition, which indirectly connects with achievement. And both beliefs may undergo developmental changes. For example, older and younger students were more likely to be clustered as members of different profiles. So the current study aimed to partially replicate Chen to investigate how these beliefs in science function among college students. We had 2 research questions. The first one was, what distinct college students' profiles emerge from measures of science, epistemic beliefs, and implicit theories on science ability? The second research question was, how do these emergent college students' profiles relate to achievement goal orientations? Participants were 285 undergraduate students who were taking a required science course at a large university in the United States. The majority of students were the first and second year students and represented a variety of science and non-science majors. We used established measures of science epistemic beliefs, implicit theories of science ability, and achievement goal orientations used by Chen on a 6-point Likert scale. For the epistemic beliefs measure, it includes 4 subscales. We follow by Chen to classify the 4 subscales as 2 perspectives. For naive epistemic beliefs, it includes source, which is whether the knowledge is inherent in authorities, and certainty, which is whether the science questions only have one correct answer. For the sophisticated epistemic beliefs, it includes development, which is whether science is an evolving body of knowledge, and a justification, which is whether science knowledge is justified by scientific experiments. So here is the information of these measures. You can notice that the Cronbach alpha of these subscales ranged from 0.75 to 0.91. To answer the first research question, what distinct college students' profiles emerged? We conducted cluster analysis to answer this question by including hierarchical cluster analysis and k-means cluster analysis. To answer the second research question, how do these emergent profiles relate to achievement goal orientations? We conducted MANOVA by using dependent variables as 3 types of the achievement goal orientations, and with the independent variable as a cluster membership, which was confirmed by the cluster analysis. The results of hierarchical cluster analysis suggested 3 cluster solutions, including 3, 4, and 5 cluster solutions. We further validated these cluster solutions by using different analyses, such as one-way ANOVA, discriminant function analysis. We also analyzed the cluster characteristics. Finally, we decided on 4 cluster solutions. So this is how the cluster look like. So the source and certainty are the naive epistemic beliefs. Development and justification are the sophisticated epistemic beliefs. Entity and incremental are the ability beliefs. So across the 4 clusters, college students had a higher level of sophisticated epistemic beliefs. Naive epistemic beliefs and ability beliefs varied across clusters. Let's see the profile characteristics. Let's start from the profile 3. So students in this cluster endorse the highest level of naive epistemic beliefs, the lowest level of sophisticated epistemic beliefs, and the highest entity ability belief across clusters. So we name this cluster as passive beliefs profile. For the profile 2, you can see that students endorse the highest level of sophisticated epistemic beliefs and incremental belief, and the lowest level of naive epistemic beliefs and entity ability belief across clusters. So we name this cluster as progressing beliefs profile. For profile 1, you can see that students hold a lower level of naive epistemic beliefs and a higher level sophisticated epistemic beliefs. So this endorsement demonstrates students' sophisticated epistemic beliefs. And the students hold both an average level of the entity and incremental ability beliefs. So we name this cluster as sophisticated epistemic and average ability beliefs profile. For the profile 4, you can see that students hold a higher level of sophisticated epistemic beliefs. Students hold the second highest level of naive epistemic beliefs across clusters. So this endorsement demonstrated mixed epistemic beliefs. And students also hold a lower level entity ability belief and higher level incremental ability belief. So this endorsement indicated incremental ability beliefs. So we named this cluster as mixed epistemic beliefs and incremental belief profiles. The results of MANOVA indicated that there were statistically significant differences in the 3 achievement goal orientations with regard to profiles. Let's further understand these results. For the master goal orientation, you can see that students in both profile 2 and 4 had higher score. Both of them are significantly higher than profile 1. So we want to know what drive these differences. We can see that profile 2 and 4 are not significantly different from each other on master goal orientation. So the commonality between these profiles would be the determinant factor for students to endorse mastery goal orientation, which is incremental ability belief. Both of them are significantly higher than profile 1. So we can see that profile 1 has average level of ability belief. So we deduct that higher level of incremental beliefs might determine students to endorse master goal orientation. For the performance approach goal orientation, profile 3 has the highest score and significantly higher than profile 2 and 4. But profile 2 and 4 are not significantly different from each other. We want to know what drive these differences. So, profile 3 consists of naive epistemic beliefs and entity ability belief. Profile 2 consists of sophisticated epistemic beliefs and incremental ability belief. Profile 4 consists of mixed epistemic beliefs and incremental ability belief. So when we compare the profiles acrossly, we could say that entity ability beliefs might be a determinant for students to endorse performance approach goal orientation. But it's hard to say whether epistemic beliefs determine students' tendency for performance approach goal orientation. For the performance avoidance goal orientation, you can see that profile 2 has the lowest score and is significantly lower than all other 3 profiles. Comparing both epistemic beliefs and ability beliefs, the profile 2 progressing profile is lower than all other 3 types of the beliefs configuration. For example, epistemic beliefs could be sophisticated, naive, or mixed. Ability beliefs could be average, entity, or incremental. So we tend to say that the configuration of progressing epistemic beliefs and ability beliefs make students less likely to endorse performance avoidance goal orientation. So here are the 3 takeaways. College students who held the incremental belief were the most likely to adopt mastery goal orientation in science learning. College students who held the entity belief were more likely to adopt performance approach goal orientation in science learning. College students with progressing beliefs that held sophisticated epistemic beliefs and the highest level of incremental ability belief were the least likely to adopt performance avoidance goal orientation in science learning. In comparing our results with Chen, both studies had 4 emergent profiles, but with variation in the configuration of beliefs and association with achievement goal orientations. Both studies highlighted the need to consider both epistemic beliefs and ability beliefs in conjunction with each other. For implications, college instructors could encourage students to believe their science ability as incremental, which will motivate students to adopt more adaptive learning goals. Students' endorsement in performance avoidance goal might be determined by both epistemic beliefs and ability beliefs, since the performance-oriented goal orientations have more complex effects on learning. Further exploration is needed. We look forward to discussing the study with you during the conference time. Thank you very much.